the scary Peppa Pig episode that never made it to TV. Peppa appeared on screen. She stood in a fog. Her eyes had no pupils, and something black dripped from her mouth. She was silent. No credits, no laughter. Just a shaky title in what looked like dried blood. Miss Gazelle's class. The camera panned to the school building. But it wasn't the sunny school we know. It stood in a dead field, surrounded by leafless trees. The doors creaked in the wind. The windows were boarded up. On one of the boards, something was carved. No one leaves. Peppa walked toward it, followed by Susie, Pedro, and Danny. But no one was talking. No giggles, no skipping. They moved like puppets, like they were brought there against their will. Inside, the halls were empty. Lights flickered overhead. Torn notebooks, broken toys, and tiny teeth were scattered across the floor. The walls were covered in drawings, but all of them showed the same thing. Miss Gazelle with black, hollow eyes, and children hanging from strings like marionettes. The children entered the classroom. Miss Gazelle stood by the chalkboard, unmoving. On the board, scrawled in jagged handwriting, "Miss a lesson, stay forever." When Peppa stepped closer, the teacher slowly turned around. Her face was missing, just stretched skin over a hollow skull. She spoke in a voice that sounded like multiple people speaking at once, deep, cracked, and wrong. "Sit down, children. Today is an important day." Their chairs were made of metal with built-in cuffs. As soon as they sat, chains slid out and locked their arms. Peppa tried to scream, but no sound came out. Not silence. It was like her voice had been stolen. Miss Gazelle walked among them, scratching symbols onto the board. Not letters, not numbers. Symbols that looked like eyes, mouths, claws. "Today we will learn the true language," she said. "Only those who see beyond the veil may speak it. The rest will stay silent. Forever." The camera zoomed in on Peppa. Her eyes were wide open, but inside was nothing. A doll was placed on her desk. A small fabric version of herself. Torn mouth, hollow eyes, and a stitched message on its belly. "New teacher." Susie began to whimper. But instead of a sob, tiny fingers spilled from her mouth. She collapsed. Miss Gazelle whispered, "Another failed student." Susie slowly faded into a pool of black shadow. Another message appeared on the chalkboard. "Who watches is already present." The screen split into 9 segments. Each one was a security camera feed. One showed their classroom. The others were different rooms, different students, different Miss Gazelles. All were sitting. All were silent. All had dolls. A message appeared across the center of the screen. 9 classrooms, 9 lessons, 9 teachers, and 1 viewer. I understood. They were talking to me. Miss Gazelle turned to face the screen, to face me, and said, "We've been waiting for you, student. You are late for class. Now the door will never close." The screen flickered. I saw myself in the corner of one of the classrooms, sitting still, frozen. A name tag pinned to my chest. "Welcome. My name." Finale last shot. The classroom is empty. Only the Peppa doll sits at the teacher's desk. She now has eyes, teeth, and a pointer stick. On the board, "Class never ends." Silence. And then, a whisper. "Sit down. Listen. Don't forget to take notes. You're next." The ominous smell. One day, Mama Pig found an old recipe in her grandmother's cookbook. It was a special dish no one in her family had ever heard of. The book claimed that it would bring extraordinary taste sensations, so Mama Pig decided to cook it for dinner. When she pulled the dish out of the oven, it gave off a strange, almost sweet smell. Although Peppa and George immediately felt something was off, they thought it was just some unusual spices. Mama Pig was confident that she had done everything right, so despite their doubts, the whole family decided to try the dish. But as soon as they took their first bite, something began to happen. It started with a slight headache, and then strange things began to occur in the house. The first oddity. A strange, low sound echoed in the hallway, like a distant, distorted laugh. It grew louder whenever Peppa tried to pass, but disappeared when she turned around. The second oddity. All the furniture in the house began to shift slightly, as if someone was moving it, but no one was touching it. Tables and chairs moved across the room, creating a terrible feeling that the house was alive. The third oddity. The walls began to seem liquid. Peppa and George noticed that their reflections in the mirrors began moving independently of them. The walls grew darker, and strange shadows appeared on the floor. Mama Pig became more and more nervous because she couldn't understand what was happening. In panic, she returned to the recipe, but she noticed something strange in the book, symbols she hadn't seen before. When she tried to read them aloud, the room suddenly plunged into complete darkness. Peppa and George could no longer find their parents. The house was silent. When they finally found their parents, they were completely still, their eyes closed, and their faces frozen in fear. Suddenly, they heard a strange whisper. "You cannot return. This house is now ours." As soon as those words were spoken, the family was trapped. The house seemed to swallow them, growing darker and more ominous, and the doors and windows slammed shut. Peppa and George couldn't escape, and their parents' cries vanished as if they were consumed by the darkness. The next morning, the neighboring animals noticed that the pig family's house had been abandoned, and a strange light was coming through the windows. No one knew what happened to them, but everyone felt something was wrong with that house now. The closet. The day was ordinary. After dinner, Peppa and George went up to their room as usual. George quickly fell asleep, snuggling his plush dinosaur, while Peppa played for a little longer, scattering her toys across the floor. The nightlight cast a soft glow over the room. The moon shone outside the window. Everything was peaceful. Before going to bed, Peppa decided to tidy up. She gathered her toys and opened the closet to put them away. The darkness inside seemed a little deeper than usual, as if the shelves extended further than she remembered. She placed her plush teddy bear inside, and at that moment something grabbed her hand. A sudden yank, and Peppa disappeared into the closet. At first, there was complete silence. Then she felt herself falling. Her body sank into something soft, like thick, invisible fog. But as soon as she tried to move, the space around her felt solid. She stood up. Absolute darkness. No closet, no room, no light. Peppa called for Mummy. Her voice was swallowed by endless emptiness. She took a step forward. The floor beneath her was cold. But was this her room? Her closet? She kept walking. Time passed. Minutes? Hours? She had no idea. The darkness never changed, never shifted. Only silence remained. But soon the silence was broken. Somewhere behind her, a faint sound echoed, like someone else had just taken a step. Peppa froze. A step, another. But when she turned around, there was only nothing. Something was here. She could feel it. It never moved when she looked. She ran. Light. Suddenly, a dim glow flickered ahead. Distant. Weak. Peppa sprinted toward it, her heart pounding. The darkness around her tightened, closing in. But she didn't stop. In the next moment, she tumbled back into her room. Peppa lay on the floor in front of the open closet. Everything was in its place. George was asleep. The nightlight glowed softly. The moon shone outside. She breathed heavily. Was it just a dream? But something felt wrong. She stood up. Her movements felt strange, as if her body didn't fully obey her. Slowly, she turned toward George's bed. He was sleeping, unaware of anything. Peppa smiled, but it was not her smile. George's loop. The day begins with soft morning light falling on George's pillow. He wakes up, yawns, and grabs his old stuffed dinosaur. Going down the stairs, he sees Mama and Papa. Peppa accidentally spills juice on him. Everyone laughs, but George frowns. After breakfast, they go for a walk. The weather is cloudy and there are almost no people in the park. George slides down the slide, but suddenly he sees a black silhouette in the distance. He blinks. The silhouette disappears. On the way home, a black cat runs by, and Papa jokes that it's good luck. When George returns to his room, the lights in the house start flickering. He notices that the closet door is slightly open, even though it was closed in the morning. George closes it and lies in bed. Suddenly, a creak. The closet opens again. A shadow with red eyes appears, taking a step forward. George shuts his eyes and wakes up again. But the day begins the same. Spilled juice, Peppa smiling, everything repeats. George starts to check how everything happens the same. He tears the napkin, arranges the books in the wrong order, but the day always ends the same. Creak, closet, breathing. On the third or fourth cycle, he decides to hide under the bed, but he sees the shadow leaning over and looking at him. He closes his eyes, but it doesn't help. Everything disappears for only a second, and it starts again. Over time, George stops being afraid. He stops hiding. When the closet opens again, he just watches. The shadow approaches, its eyes glimmering. It leans in, but disappears in the rustle of air. The next morning, everything is different. Peppa doesn't spill juice. Papa plays dinosaurs with George. The closet is empty. George decides to check it and opens the door. Inside, only neatly folded t-shirts. He smiles, but when he closes the closet, he notices a new drawing on the floor. It's an image of that same monster, but with one difference. Now it's not smiling. It's holding George's paw, and George looks at it with empty eyes. The closet closes with a heavy creak. George doesn't move. Everything becomes dark.